Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. So glad everybody can be with us this evening. I got Kevin Midgette here. I thought he was at the betting window collecting all his parlays and all his stuff. Right away he won the coin flip, and how did it go from there, Kevin?
Well, first of all, I've been waiting 20 minutes for Duncan and Lloyd to show up, so I'm glad they can make time to be here. Once again, I snuck in barely under the radar.
There we
Um,
go.
I had to sit there and brag about the fact that I had to send it to Lloyd that I won not only the coin toss heads or tails, I had heads, but I had New England winning the coin flip. So
Wow.
I'm up $50 basically to start the game. Let's
Should have
go.
walked away.
Should have left right at that point. I'll do a long story short because we have a long show. I made 12 bets for this Super Bowl. I didn't realize it until the day of the Super Bowl. I didn't pick anybody to win the game. So I'm like,
Oh,
all right, I got to go
goodness.
back and pick somebody to win the game. Obviously, I didn't miss something. So that's my 13th bet, which I had Seattle and teased down the over under to 42.5. As we all know, it came to 42 points, so I lost that bet. So out of 13 bets, yours truly bet $140 it stretched out to. I won 143, $3. I mean $3.
See, and all that angst. That's why I stopped laying the cake out there. It just sometimes it makes the game exciting, but other times it's like, oh God, why am I doing this? You see crazy stuff. Um, I always think of the lateral touchdown at the end that doesn't make any sense, and then next thing you know, the other team's getting the under, the over, based on all those pitchy woo woo. And next thing you know, there's some meaningless touchdown that affects the over underscore. So it's like gambling so big it's here to stay, though. The NFL is in bed with everybody, DraftKings, and ESPN's even got their own betting site. And we talked about ESPN owning NFL Network, so it's here to stay. And a ton of money was bet yesterday. And let's get to the game. It was Super Bowl Sunday, Super Bowl 60 out in Santa Clara, California. The Seattle Seahawks win it 29-13. Uh, I was talking to Duncan before you came on, Kevin. It was interesting because this Super Bowl just did not have a lot of juice, other than everybody talking about halftime competing shows, and there was no superstar player. You know what I mean? Everybody was talking about one thing: is Sam Darnold going to sh to bed? So we saw that he didn't, and he didn't have any turnovers. But the story really was the Seahawks defense and their running game.
Yeah, and it's kind of we had a feeling that's how it was going to go for Seattle to win. I did think Darnold would have more yards passing. He was trying to get it to JSN early. I mean, he had a wide open touchdown at one point, but he just overthrew me and missed it. Both quarterbacks were under unbelievable pressure, though. I have never seen a Super Bowl game where both quarterbacks are just getting rushed as the way they were with those defensive lines.
Yeah, that's a great comment because when I started crunching the stats for this game, they were both under duress. Sam Darnold on 15 was pressured on 15 of his 40 dropbacks, so that was 37%. He only got sacked one time, but Drake May, I mean, this poor young guy, he's going to be seeing the Lawrence and the rest of that Seattle line in his sleep because he was pressured. He dropped back 53 times, which is just crazy. He was pressured on 14 of them for 26.4%, and he got sacked 6 times this game, Kevin. So McDonald was bringing blitzes from all over. He was bringing Umanjari up the middle. He was bringing Reek Woolen off the edge, and Woolen actually got home one time. And then Derek Hall had the game for Seattle. Unknown guy. Everybody talks about Lawrence on that line, Leonard Williams. But Derek Hall, he had 2 sacks in the game. And then Nwosu got the pick six, which I thought may have been a fumble. I'm not sure it was. They called it an interception, and that just really put the icing on the game. But should kicker Brett Myers have been the MVP for Seattle Seahawks? He kicked 5 field goals in this game as McDonald was content to have his defense shorten the game and kept putting his kicker out there, and he made 5 kicks.
Well, if there was ever a Super Bowl where a kicker was going to win MVP, that was it. That was their chance as the kicker regime. The kicker union meetings is like, we had our chance. That was the one. No, he did what a kicker should do. The guy's still in the Super Bowl. He's used to that stadium. He's used to how the winds play as well, which I think played in his favor. Walker deserved it, though. I think Walker was the reason why they carried them into position for Myers to get on the field to kick those field goals. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I have no problem with Walker winning that MVP.
Yeah, and me neither. I thought Walker was just tremendous. I tweeted out at halftime, Patriots only had 51 total yards. Walker had already 100 yards in the first half, and he was just dominant in this game. And he's a humble guy. He's going to get praise to his offensive line. They did a nice job across, and the rest of the guys up front for Seattle Seahawks. Walker, 27 rushes for 135. He had 7 first downs. He also had some nice catches. He had 2 catches for 26 yards and a first down. So he was just tremendous in this game. Obviously, from a betting aspect, everybody's going to talk about. He had that long TD run that would have been the NFL Films moment, where he takes it to the house in slow motion. But holding on the play against the center for Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, how many flags were called in that game, by the way? I know there was one in the first half. So they were kind of letting these guys play for the most part. Um, the one thing that stands out to me, I mean, Walker, we talked about right before we went on air. I was like, that was his Marcus Allen moment from that Raiders Super Bowl win
Yeah.
against the formerly known Redskins. It was that moment where you show on NFL films, and it kind of got taken away. Going back into the game, I just want to say Drake May looked very overwhelmed. Like,
Yes.
he was not ready. He hadn't thrown the ball. I will go to take away the last half of the Denver game because of the weather and everything. He really hadn't thrown the ball for about 3 weeks until he went into that game. And I mean, their game plan, I don't think really was standing up.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels didn't do him any favors. They did not do a lot of screens. Their line was struggling, Kevin. They're a good run blocking line, but they couldn't get Stevenson going. He only had 23 rushing yards, and then Henderson only had 19 rushing yards. So, the leading rusher was Drake May, and a lot of those runs were him running for his life, 5 rushes for 37 yards. But he was under duress the whole time. Will Campbell, their young left tackle, he struggled mightily in this game. He let up 14 pressures, and he just was not getting the job done. And obviously, as you said, Drake May, McDonald made sure he was blitzing him, harassing him, and he was just not comfortable in the pocket. And in the end, yeah, his numbers don't look horrible, Calvin. 27-43, 295, which, that got bumped up in garbage time. But he had those 2 interceptions, including a pick six, and he just was harassed, as I said earlier, sacked 6 times. So, everybody's going to look for somebody to blame. And I guess if we give Lloyd's lackey this week, it's going to be Drake May.
Yeah, actually, I'm with McDaniels on that, though. I mean, they did not put that kid in a situation to succeed whatsoever. And it was just, he was trying. I mean, you watch that first half of that game. I mean, that offensive line is just getting gutted by Seattle. I mean, they're coming up the middle untouched, from the side untouched, and he didn't stand a chance. He was shell shocked. I think between the middle of the first quarter to about midway through the third quarter, his head was spinning. So for the fact that he came back and resembled a little bit of like the second runner up to the MVP, in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
at least he hung a little bit of numbers. But yeah, man, he was scarred on that.
Yeah, he had a tough time out there. And nobody wasn't doing much for the Patriots, let's face it. For a large portion of this game, they were 6 of 15 on third downs, which is just huge. They had one stretch, I think it was in the third quarter, where they had 6 of 7 drives were 3 and outs, where they
Yeah.
just seemed to be punting all the time. And Vrabel's conservative, but he needed to get somebody get going there. And at halftime, it's 9-0 Seattle, and it's just like, all right, this game's pretty much over because Matt Collins finally gets on the end zone in the third quarter. Which, yeah, Matt Collins. What did you say? Say, Kevin. What about Matt Collins?
You can only hope to contain Mac Hollins.
Yes, Matt Collins, and I put this out on BYP. This was one of my prop bets. Matt Collins, 2.5 receptions was the number, and he beat it. I knew he would get the over somehow. He got 4 catches on 8 targets, 78 yards, and that touchdown we talked about. So Mac Hollins, I mean, yeah, you looking for a storyline? There's a storyline for you. But unfortunately for Mac, and his barefooted self, they did not win it. The Patriots just did not win the game. Did not show up, and a guy who was kind of forgotten. And I want to get your take on Cooper Cup. How about him? Everybody said about JSN and his his game. Offensive Player of the Year. But it was Cooper Kupp. He had 6 catches on 12 targets, 61 yards. He had 2 first downs in this one. He's now a 2-time Super Bowl champion.
Well, the thing is, also you have to take in consideration is the fact that that guy's a Super Bowl MVP. Like he's not scared of the
Right.
big stage, and as we saw from the end of the regular season in the playoffs, he was used a lot more. They focused for him a little more, in the offensive game plan. So for Cooper Cup to show up in that situation, I'm not surprised a little bit. The one thing, not calling myself a gambling guy, but as I'm watching the game, and there's some things like you don't think about as much. You're not focused on as much, I should say. AJ Barner started getting the ball early,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, huh. So what did yours truly do? Live bet Barner for a touchdown, and
There you
sure
go.
enough, that's what helped bring us back a little bit. When he hit Barner for a touchdown, I'm like, there we go, because they were focusing on him a little more. Yeah, JSN. When you look back on it now, it's like it makes sense. Even though they were trying to get him the ball under the pressure Darnold was under, it makes sense he didn't get the game that we were thinking.
Yeah, and you got to credit Christian Gonzalez too. He was shadowing
Oh
JSN
yeah.
for a large portion of this game. He almost had a couple picks in early going for the Patriots, and he just showed what a dominating player that he is. And you know, JSN, hey, he's happy to get his ring, but he only had 4 catches, 10 targets, 27 yards, and got evaluated for a concussion where he missed a large portion of I think it was the third quarter. So it's quality win for Seattle, and then you start talking about okay, everybody doesn't want to let it sink in. They're talking about can they repeat, or what are you thinking about Seattle's future? I mean, is it bright? Is this like a 1-year aberration? What are you thinking in terms of their future, Kevin?
I'm going to put it to you this way: not a chance in hell they repeat. There is no way that is going to happen. I think we're starting to wander down this lonely road of the next 3 to 4 years of the one and dones. Until we get somebody. I don't look at somebody right now that has the team or the players set up to go for multiple year runs. I mean, we got some guys with some young quarterbacks. The teams are decent, but there's a lot of them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't see the repeat champion coming. Could be for a decade for all I know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's all based on the coach and the quarterback, and you just look at the Eagles. I mean, they just showed you this year. Every season changes, and in terms of Jalen Hurts, he struggled this year. I mean, last year, the whole Eagles team was dialed in, and the defense was playing incredible. Saquon had a season for the ages, running for 2,000 yards, and everything was right. Well, everything that was right in 2024 was wrong in 2025 because they couldn't even get out of the wild card round of the playoffs, losing at home, and there's just all this internal strife with the team. Obviously, everybody's going to point to their offensive coordinator, and that's a big thing. The Eagles lost Kellen Moore to the New Orleans Saints, and they had to fill that void, and they picked the wrong guy. So, we'll see with Seattle, especially Kevin, because they're up for sale. Jody Allen, their owner, she inherited the team from Paul Allen, a brother who passed away, and she's going to cash in probably for $8 billion or so, and there's going to be a new owner, and you always talk about free agent defections, and the biggest bugaboo is injuries because that's what took apart the Philadelphia Eagles this year. Their offensive line, which was their engine, they've really broken down in terms of Jurgens and Dickerson and Lane Allen this season, Lane Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, football more so, I believe, than any other sport is definitely a year to year. It's just for the fact like when guys miss games in other sports, you have 82, 162 games to make up for it. You miss like 2 weeks in the NFL. I mean, you're missing basically, an eighth of your season at that point.
Right.
And especially if you, God forbid, you get hurt in December. Now the chances are you might not even play in the playoffs. I mean, it's a tougher road to hoe. I'll put it that way. So, I mean, for someone to go back to back again, I think it's going to be a minute.
Yeah, and you got to have the continuity, and that's why the Chiefs were able to do it a couple years ago with Mahomes and Andy Reid, Travis Kelsey. But that group, they got old quick, and they were trying for that three-peat, and they weren't even close. So it's like, you have the Chiefs from a couple years ago, and then you got to go all the way back to the Patriots in 0304, the back-to-back champions. So I do agree with you that it seems to be changing in NFL, and I think parity has a lot to do with that as well, Kevin. Where uh, shit we saw the Cleveland Browns beat the Green Bay Packers this year. I mean, who would have thought that? You know what I mean? So it can happen. So it's where it's like, okay, anybody can beat anyone, and then once you get to the playoffs, it's really on the quarterbacks to get it done. And then we saw some great quarterbacks this year kind of not getting done when it mattered most. Josh Allen, everybody thought, oh, he's got a clear path, no Lamar, no Patrick Mahomes. Well, you know what? They couldn't get it done. So it's just a long road to hoe, and every season's different. So we'll see. I know we'll give the Seattle fans a chance to thump their chest and have their parade and all that stuff, but everybody's turned the page. But getting ready for the 2026 season here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029, the Game Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for everybody joining with us. I see Penguin is chiming in. Thanks for being a loyal listener, Penguin. Yeah, uh, we'll see. We'll see in terms of Gonzalez to. I think he meant Fernandez. So I think Fernandez, he's going to the Raiders. So we'll see. A lot of draft talk coming up, but Kevin and I are wrapping in a bow on the Super Bowl. And Kevin, where did you end up according to plan? Did you watch half the game at the party, or half at home, or did you stay at home?
I just came straight home. I was at work for a little longer than I thought I was going to be, and it's just like, you know what? I'm done with all you people. No, I'm
Yep.
coming home. I'm going to get a shower. But the one thing is, working in a restaurant, I made my own food because I'm like, if I order a pizza, that's going to be about an hour and a half. So let me
Yeah.
make a flatbread here at work. So,
There you
you kind
go.
of work around those things. But yeah, I don't like people like that anymore. I'm not trying to be around people.
Yep. And
So yeah.
I was home. I had my little notepad. And my wife was like, "Oh my God, are you taking notes?" And that's all I was doing. There was nobody here to bother me. I have one buddy. He texts me infernally all over again. Every play he's texting me, and I just ignore him. But
Mhm.
other than that, there's really not a lot to distract me from the game. And I was locked in, man. I was like, all right, maybe this game will be better than the hype. Everybody's thinking it's going to be a Seattle blow, but it just did not live up to the hype, and that was there. And Seattle took care of business. And in terms of Seattle, where do we put this defense? You had that Ravens defense that beat up Kerry Collins in like the 2000. You have
2000.
the you have the '85 Bears. Um, where are we putting them? Are they as good as Legion of Boom? What are you thinking?
No, they're not as good as Legion of Boom, that's for sure. I think they're okay. They're decent. I mean, maybe the history of the Super Bowl, you're going to almost 60 Super Bowls at this point. Let's go 35, 25 to 35, somewhere in there. The one thing I will say is, as I'm watching the Super Bowl, right, and it's 9-0, and I'm like, man, it seems like Seattle should really be pummeling them more by now.
Right.
I'm like, are they leaving New England in the game at this point? If New England could have got something going, an early touchdown in that third quarter, that could have changed that game as well. Because Seattle was in a position, the way their defense was playing, it's like you should be up at least, yeah, I'd say 17, 20 points at that point. So I think they left New England in the game the first half.
Yeah, they were dominating, and I I'm not sure I texted you or it was Rich Q or somebody. I said too many field goals. That just in a regular season game, where you're leaning all these field goals and you're up 9-0, you're up 12-0. Another team gets a touchdown, and then they get another touchdown and they're taking the lead in the blink of an eye. We've seen it
Oh,
happen over and over again. So I just think that Seattle, they were like, New England's not doing nothing against this group, and their defense just they solved the Drake May puzzle, and in terms of the Patriots, do you think their easy schedule? Now that you look back in retrospect, was like, okay, they had an easy road. A lot of people were saying that, who did they really beat? I mean, but I give them credit for getting there. You in the playoffs, they beat three quality defenses in the playoffs.
That's exactly it, Lloyd. I mean, because I've heard the same stuff on my end over here. And it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, you beat who's on your schedule, blah, 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 all that stuff. They got to the playoffs. They beat three of the top five defenses in the NFL to get to that spot. And I don't want to hear like Bo Nix didn't play. He still won against Drake May won against that Denver vaunted defense. They beat three of the top five defenses. So I'm not going to take anything away rather from New England for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, the game's always going to kind of be a letdown. The Super Bowl. You're not going to see too many Super Bowls that are close, and we've seen too many blowouts over the years. Uh, every once in a while, you'll get an overtime game or something like that, but the pressure of that moment is just too big for some teams. And conversely, you've seen teams spit the bit. Look at the Falcons. They're still kicking themselves in the butt, up 28-3. And you got to get it done when it matters most. And we talk about, the NFL films moment, America's game, and they show it in graphic detail, all these plays and how a team got there, and it's a game of inches. So, you tip your cap to the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, big win, 29-13, and McDonald's a young head coach. He's 38. They have a very good GM and John Schneider. This is his second iteration in terms of building a Super Bowl team, and he's doing a great job in terms of the draft. So they're in the mix now. Their Super Bowl winning head coach Sam Darnold. Now you got to say it, Super Bowl champion Sam Darnold kind of has the same ring as Super Bowl champion James Bradbury, what I mean, for the Philadelphia Eagles. But you got to give him his props. Is he now? Where should people think of him? Somebody asked me this, and I wanted to get your take on it. Is he top 10 quarterback? I mean, should they come in next year and look for him to sling the ball all over the barn like a Matthew Stafford?
I'll tell you what, if that guy could have threw for 220 yards, I would have liked him more than for that 202 that he threw, 18 yards short of me. But once again, that's just me talking. Sam Darnold, I classify at this point in his career. I say Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, like that kind of stuff. I think Doug Williams is better than those guys I just
Yeah.
mentioned. So I'm not even going to
Hmm.
put Doug Williams in that category. But yeah, Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, Sam Darnold at this point. Now, if Sam Darnold comes in next year and wins another 14 games for the third year in a row, once again, I'll shake that whole USC moniker. I'll give him his flowers. But I mean, he's got a nice little run going. I'm not going to disparage the guy. He's been on 4, 5, 6 teams now. I mean, the guy's
Yeah.
bounced. And the fact that he's won a Super Bowl now, good for him.
Yeah, 5 teams, and he broke that USC quarterback curse, and I started looking, and I started thinking about that. I was like, oh man, maybe Kevin's got something to do with it. I started, because I'm the football historian. I started thinking of all the overrated uh, USC quarterbacks. My buddy Byron's out in LA, and he and I started running through them. Rob Johnson, uh, Rodney Pete,
Uh,
and the one guy, the savior, and we all remember he's probably around our age now. The druggie Todd Marinovich. He was supposed to be the truth. His father bred him to be what, robo quarterback. They had him in Sports Illustrated as that, and unfortunately he had you know substance abuse issues, and he just never became the guy. And he was playing arena football, and his mugshot's some out there. Out there, everybody Google him if you wanted to see him. But yeah, the USC quarterbacks. Everybody always sees them every year playing against Notre Dame, playing against UCLA, and they think, oh, maybe this guy's the truth. But yeah, it's just such a different game in the pros, and we'll talk about uh, soon. We'll talk about the prospects coming into the draft, and it's such a big change. But yeah, you got to give Darnold his flowers. He did the job. The main thing was he did not turn the football over because in all my analysis, I kept leaning on that. He led the NFL with 20 turnovers this year, 14 interceptions, and I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of those early throws in that first quarter, you're like, "Oh, here it comes," and Jones as well as Gonzalez, they had their hands on a couple balls. I wish they probably wish they probably caught him, but in the end, he did what did he do? 19 of 38, 202, as Kevin said, one in touchdown. Got sacked one time, but no interception. So got it done. Uh, Again, the Seahawks be celebrating this week. Flowers to them. But you know the NFL, they'll turn the page quick. The league year will start, I believe, around March 11th, and then we jump right into free agency and then the draft, and there'll always be something to talk about. But yeah, they're going to be the hunted now, and the Eagles found that out. You know, when it's easier to be the hunter than the hunted. Now everybody's going to have the bullseye on their back, and there's going to be some defections because everybody always they want to cash in after big. Speaking of cashing in, Kenneth Walker, pending free agent. Now, are they going to sign him? They going to franchise tag him? What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I think Seattle's in a spot now because Charbonnet's coming off the injury. So it's like Walker, your Super Bowl MVP. You can't let him go. You know, I mean, you just can't. And the thing is, let's be honest, he's a good running back. He actually got more time to shine with Charbonnet being out. So I think you can see like the multi-purpose stuff that he can do. Like you get the ball near the red zone, you can give it to Walker. He's going to punch it in because they were inclined to actually give the ball to Charbonnet
Yeah,
once they got inside the 10.
oh yeah, you're speaking the truth because he was on my fantasy team, and all season I was cussing and fussing. I was like, oh my god, this guy, yeah, he's going to get, I don't know, he was getting about 80 some yards a game, no touchdowns, and I benched him. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So,
sure.
but he came alive in the playoffs, particularly in the Super Bowl, and you saw he was a downhill runner. I actually forgot, like at Michigan State, he was a dominant player at Michigan
Yeah.
State, and that for some reason Clint Kubiak liked giving that ball to Charbonnet and letting him carry it in, and with but yeah, I think this is Walker's time to get paid. And with Charbonnet having had an ACL, and that happened late in the season, I think it was like November, December. So he may not even be ready for training camp. So yeah, Walker's probably going to get paid. Obviously, they'll use that Saquon Barkley contract to work off of. But you start questioning: is he a $16 million back? That's a lot of money to give to a running back that's I don't want to say he's unproven, but he's in his fourth year. Is Do you think he gets that type of money?
Yeah, I do. With the inflation that we've seen in all these salaries and all these positions, I think he gets it. And I mean, whether it's from Seattle or somebody else, he's going to get that money. I mean, how many people can you tell me how many running backs can you say that you would want instead of Kenneth Walker? You know, and
Yeah,
you sit there. Maybe there's a handful, but especially like you said, a guy who's fourth year, he's young enough still. There's still tread on the tires. So yeah, I'd throw the money at him.
yeah. And the running backs position seems to be back. I just was crunching that last week. I think there was over 20 backs that got over 1,000 yards this season, and it's they can stop having their running back summit. They're getting their respect now. They're getting their money, and teams realize the value of them. But you got to have a dual threat guy. So, all right, fantasy football time. Where is Kenneth Walker kind of going in terms of? Do you take him ahead of CMC, who's getting a little old, or But we know Bijan's going to be the number one pick probably next season. But where does Kenneth Walker fall in terms of running backs?
I tell you what, I never touched CMC to begin with because the guy's always injury prone, but yet he stayed healthy this year. So what's that tell me? He's really going to get injured next year. But the question is, would I take Saquon or Derrick Henry ahead of Walker at this
That's a good
point?
one.
And I've got about 6 more months to figure that out.
All right.
But as of right now, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Bijan Robinson, James Cook, probably be the top backs going, and then yeah, he's got to fall in that group. I would say yes, around Derrick Henry. I think that's a good barometer for
Yeah.
him. And then Saquon. We'll get to the Eagles in a minute because we're both based out of Philadelphia area, and it's just like lots to cover with the Philadelphia Eagles. But Saquon, there's some changes coming with the Philadelphia Eagles, and Kevin, we're talking Eagles here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 Game Coast Sports Digital Network. We touched on this a little bit last week. The Eagles finally got their OC position handled. Sean Mannion's coming over from the Green Bay Packers. Josh Grizzard helping out too from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was their offense coordinator. He's going to be the Eagles passing coordinator. Uh, Good moves, bad moves, or who the hell are these guys?
Horrendous moves coupled with who the hell are these guys? Yeah, yeah, it's terrible. It's absolutely horrible. There's a reason why nobody took this job. There's once again, if you're looking from the outside, it's either nobody wants to work with the GM, which I don't think is a thing. I mean, people respect Howie
Yeah,
Roseman. I don't think that's it. We'll
I don't
take him
think
off
that's
the
it.
table. So you got Sirianni, you got Jalen Hurts, or both. So it's one of those situations. I think this is a year where the Eagles are going to spiral out of control, and then all the management house gets cleaned besides Howie.
Yeah, well, it's always going to be Howie and Jeffrey Lurie, and then you got Sirianni there, and he's going to be looking over the shoulder of Mannion, and I don't care what they say that he's no longer in charge. Of the offense, he's still going to try to have his hand in the pot, and then Patullo was not fired. He's still in the building. I think they demoted him, so it's just like it's just like a three-ring circus in terms of this offense, Kevin. And you were right. Jalen Hurts, he took a step back this season. A big thing is offensive line, which we'll touch on in a minute in terms of their fluctuations. A.J. Brown, he's also in the mix, reading books on the sidelines, pouting. He came out and I think he was campaigning. My son Braden, he's a Ravens fan, and I heard Lamar and him were campaigning for him to get to the Ravens. I mean, is AJ Brown going to be on the Eagles when training camp starts in July?
AJ will be there when training camp starts. AJ will not be there when the season starts. I'll put it that way. Lamar needs a wide receiver, though. It makes sense. It's like, yeah, AJ can still play. Because someone was trying to bring up was AJ, comparable to like other people. Oh, it was Tyreek Hill. I had some stinking Dolphins fan trying to tell me about Tyreek Hill. I was like, the difference between AJ and Tyreek Hill is AJ still wants to play. Tyreek Hill's the only guy I ever saw with a horrible, wretched knee injury that cost him the season, smiling, being carted off because he didn't have to play anymore. Now AJ wants to play. He just has to be in the right situation. So yeah, I think AJ is gone by the time week one rolls around.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, Kevin, because AJ Brown's making a lot of money, and then the Eagles they're paying Devontae Smith good money, and then AJ Brown. You can't pay everybody, so it's going to be interesting because the free agent market for wide receiver is going to be set. And I wanted to get your take on this. The Cowboys basically have said in a couple weeks they are going to franchise George Pickens. Uh, and that means he's going to have a 1 year, $28 million contract. He's coming off a breakout season of 93 catches, 1429 receiving yards, and all pro honors. How are they going to fit Pickens, CD Lamb underneath the cap, and have a $60 million quarterback? And I pretty much I know the answer, but this is Jerry being Jerry, man.
I want that man to live to be 120 years old. I think he's a genius. I think every decision's the right one, Jerry. You keep doing you. Um, yeah, especially Pickens. That's the one cat I want to see disgruntled with his contract because I'm sure it won't
It's
carry
coming.
over to the field at all. Not a little bit. Nah, man, that's gonna blow up. It's once again, it's the Terrell Owens. Get your popcorn ready, man. I'm here for it. Let's go.
Yeah, so the receivers are divas, and it's just like who knows how it's going to work out. But getting back to the Philadelphia Eagles, it was announced today former Vikings offensive line coach Chris Cooper is going to replace Jeff Stoutland for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's coming all out. Stoutland uh, was kind of demoted during the season. They took his run coordinator play calling ability. I think he was fighting with Patullo and Sirianni behind the scenes, and he said it's enough's enough. Stoutland had been there, I think, like 13 seasons. Uh, both Super Bowl teams, he basically built the offensive line. And how is this going to affect the Eagles as a unit?
Well, see, this is the thing that bothers me right here. Stoutland's been around since Chip Kelly, and that's been a while. And the fact that Stoutland, everything else, you can plug anybody in there, and the offensive line's great. I mean, the tush push wouldn't have existed if Stoutland wasn't there with his offensive lineman. As much as I dislike the tush push, and by the way, Patullo's still on the team. Was he in Howie Roseman's old office in the basement? You got him in a closet somewhere. That's a joke. On top of it, there are so many dysfunctional things inside this franchise right now that we don't even know the tip of the iceberg on this. I mean, there are so many things that are screwed up, and with Stalin being gone now, you have to ask yourself now: is Lane Johnson like, I'm done? You're not even going to get one more year rather out of Lane Johnson. These other guys, I mean, you're going to see a fallout from this. It's a domino effect, and it was a bad call by the Eagles.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Eagles were 23rd in passing yards. They were 18th in rush yards. Their offense only scored about 22 points per game, which was 19th in NFL. So, this offense took a clear step back, and we talk about how difficult it is to repeat. And with Stoutland being gone, no disrespect to Chris Cupper, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Um, he's got big shoes to fill. And then we talk about the offensive line. Yeah, Jordan Mailata's coming back at left tackle. Left guard, Lane Dickerson, he's extremely beat up. I think he's had double-digit surgery since his Alabama days. And at 27, he's thinking about possibly retiring. Cam Jurgens is center. He kind of took a step back this year. He played extremely well when he won the Super Bowl. Tyler Steen, he had trouble replacing Becton. And then you talk about Lane Johnson and that Liz Frank foot injury. Is he going to come back? So, in terms of the line, how many of the five that started the season you think are going to be back in their positions in 2026?
Three definitely, four probably, not a chance on five.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that group, they had trouble staying together all season. I think the first game was the only game they all played together. And you just saw that non-continuity all season in terms of Saquon Barkley had the 2,000 yards. The previous season, this year, I think he came in around 1,200 or so. Was not seeing the rush lanes, yards before contact was not what it was in 2025. Um, 2024 to 2025, and I think they're going to have to redo the playbook. So Mannion's got his work cut out for him in terms of how are they going to run this offense. And then you talk about Mannion; he's only been a coach for 2 years, former backup quarterback, and everybody's like, oh, he has ties to McVay, he has ties to Kevin O'Connell. Everybody's young geniuses, but just because you have ties to somebody doesn't mean you're that guy. I mean, look at all the failed guys underneath the Belichick's tree. I just harken back to the Dallas Cowboys. Uh, all those guys underneath Jimmy Johnson when they were winning. Dave Wannstedt and Dave Campo, and I mean, yeah,
Oh.
just because they were on the staff doesn't mean they knew crap. So, I mean, should Eagles fans really be getting ready for the draft, or how many wins do you think?
Well, I want to go on, add on to what you just did. By the way, Dave Campo, great call out on that one. I'm going to go to the New England tree on that one with your Charlie Weiss, your Romeo Crennel,
Yes.
your Matt Patricia, Mr. Number
Oh,
Two Pencil, all those guys.
Joe
The
Judge.
There you go. So yeah, it doesn't matter. You can be with a smart guy; doesn't make you a smart guy. With the Eagles, with the draft, I mean, at this point, you got to look to see who you're replacing. I mean, you got Dallas Goddard's getting older right now. I saw a mock draft with a tight end at the number one spot. I saw a mock draft with a defensive lineman in their first spot, an offensive lineman. So I mean, it's bouncing around. The Eagles love the trenches, so I think that's probably where they're going to look.
Yeah, and I think another area that if AJ Brown doesn't come back, they need to find a number two, maybe a number three receiver. Because Jahan Dotson, who didn't work out coming over from Washington, yes, he had the touchdown in the Super Bowl last year. He's a free agent, and there's really nobody after Smith and Brown. So if you get rid of Brown, you really got a hole there. I think Howie Roseman's saying all the right things right now, and so is Brown after talking to his agent. They're saying, "Oh, I want to be here and we need him." But I think if somebody came to the Philadelphia Eagles with a second round draft pick or higher for AJ Brown, they would easily make that deal because he's just become a distraction. So I think receivers an area they're going to look in the draft. As you said, they need to build up front. Uh, Offensive line, there's going to be some fluctuation there, whether it's Dickerson retiring or Johnson retiring or both. And Dallas Goddard's a free agent, Calcaterra is a free agent, and Granderson's a free agent. So tight end definitely is a position in need for the Philadelphia Eagles. Running back, they really never replaced Gainwell, in my opinion. Will Shipley, he's more of a kick returner type. He never really did much. A.J. Dillon, a lot of people weren't talking about that. That was a very bad free agent signing by the Philadelphia
Yep.
Eagles. He had nothing left in the tank. So I think running back, they're going to be looking there. A big thing, their defense played pretty well, but their defensive line, there's a lot going on there. Jordan Davis, they need to give him a contract. Jalen Carter, he's going to be like on his 5th-year option soon, so they got to think about a contract there. Uh, Jalen Phillips, who they brought over from Miami, he is a free agent. Al is a free agent. Brandon Graham is a free agent, but he probably will retire. Uh, Okoronkwo, he's a free agent, so lots on the D line. That's where they probably will look. They will probably be, them, and it's a defensive line heavy draft, with a lot of guys that can get after quarterbacks. So they'll probably look at the defensive line because it's in a lot of flux there. I talk about all those free agents. Um, I think we touched on this guy last week, but how important is it to resign to Kobe Dean? He's a free agent. And then they did, we talked about they needed a linebacker forever. Jahad Campbell, they drafted him in the first round last year. Uh, I tend to think if it comes down between the two of them, they're going to go with the guy they drafted in the first round. And I think somebody's going to pay Kobe Dean, almost like what Josh Sweat would happen with him with the Arizona Cardinals last year.
No, somebody will pay him. There's no doubt about it. He's one of those guys you want to keep him, but if he walks, you're okay at the same time because it's the injuries. It's like if he can't stay on the field for a whole season, I mean, what point is it? You like him, but you're not married to him. So I mean,
Yeah.
if he walks, he walks. But I'd give him like the standard, and that's about it. If he gets more, good for him.
Yeah, and I think eventually the Eagles are going to allow him to shop himself around. And if it's a deal they can come, comparable, and it's not going to kill their cap, yes, maybe they'll bring the Kobe Dean back, but I tend to think he's not going to be in the roster. A big area is safety. Uh, Reed Blankenship is a free agent at free safety. They still have Makuba, who got injured late last season. I tend to think safety is another area they're going to look to in the draft. Um, I think maybe they should move Cooper DeJean there to free safety, and then that'll cover Blankenship leaving. But I think Blankenship's gone, and they'll probably bring somebody in via the draft.
They definitely need secondary help. That's for sure. I mean, it was very evident this year. Uh, they let some of the older guys go the year after the Super Bowl year, and then you still had holes that they had to, they still have to fill. So I mean, yeah, whether it be safety, cornerback, whatever you want to do with Cooper DeJean, you're gonna have to get somebody to take the other spot. So yeah, if it's Cooper DeJean went to full time safety like that, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, because he played some safety at Iowa, and he's like a hybrid at that nickel back. He was all pro there, but he's a very good tackler there, and they use him in the box, but he also has some coverage skills. I don't think he's an outside corner. A lot of people hinted around at that, but I don't think that's the spot for him. And Kevin, I think you're kind of right in terms of the other corner opposite Q Mitchell, Adoree Jackson. I think he's a free agent, and he just didn't do much. Mac McWilliams, they drafted in the 5th round. He wasn't the answer. They traded for Michael Carter coming from the Jets. He didn't do much. Jacorian Bennett from the Raiders. He didn't do much. And then Kaylee Ringo's, they can't wait anymore on him. My 2023 draft in the 4th round, he's just not done enough. So I do agree with you that there will be some secondary help coming in the draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then your favorite area, special teams. Braden Mann, their punter, is a free agent, so maybe there'll be a new punter. And I want to hear you say it again. Jake Elliott, Mister missing the extra points, and yeah, I think it's time. So what are you thinking about him? Do you still think it's time? And I say don't draft a kicker. That
No, 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 no.
Borgalis worked out for the Patriots. They drafted him out of Miami, but typically you draft a kicker. I always think of Alex Henry. The Eagles drafted him from Nebraska, and he was just terrible. You know, they can get somebody on the free agent line to give Elliott some competition.
Yeah, picking up a kicker is like picking up a closer in baseball for the most part. It's like, yeah, there's one every other block, man. You'll be all right. You'll find a kicker, Especially these younger kids today, man. They can make them like 60 to 70 yards also. So it's like, find someone practicing in the parking lot, pick him up. That's fine. Alex Henry, I remember him. He has one of the best field goal percentages. It might have been the best field goal percentage in collegiate history when he was drafted. And it was like, how'd that work out? Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, Jake Elliott, once again, edible arrangement. Thank you for your service. Your services are no longer welcome. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, in his situation where it, draft picks are too valuable to waste them on a kicker, even if it's like a sixth round, a seventh round pick. And there's so many of these guys out here that were free agent types that weren't even drafted, and you can find them. My advice is go to a soccer camp, man. Some of these guys, you know. You saw the Saints this year. They brought that kicker over from Ireland. That was a former soccer player. He's a big time kicker. So we'll see you there. We're here on Lloyd Vance's Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for joining us. We are talking Super Bowl 60. We wrapped a bow on that. Congratulations to Seattle Seahawks, 29-13 win over the Patriots. Speaking of the Patriots, everybody was sneaking in to my texts and all this about this. Want to get your take on it. The Patriots, boo-hoo, Robert Kraft and Belichick were not voted to the Hall of Fame in the first ballot. And is this as egregious as ESPN wants everybody to think it is? I mean, is it much to do about nothing? What do you think about Belichick and Kraft not getting in this time around?
All right, there's two sides of me at this point. Do they deserve to be in? Absolutely. Is there a reason why they're not in? Absolutely. They're jackasses. They were mean to everybody, truculent. They were snarky. They were jerks. The one guy got caught in a massage parlor in a strip mall being a billionaire. The other guy was just a jerk to everyone he could ever be around. Remember that week that he was the head coach of the Jets and they had to trade him for draft picks? So, yeah, there's a reason why these guys did not get in their first time around. Will they get in? Yes. Should they be in? Yes. Am I enjoying it? A little bit.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people in Philadelphia are not crying for them because,
Yeah.
the Patriots hate. And I heard a lot of people say, oh, I'm so glad Seattle beat that butt because they still can't stand the Patriots and Spygate, Deflategate, and the '04 Eagles are still talking about them taping their sessions before the Super Bowl and how they cheated them from a victory. But yeah, they've made a lot of enemies around the National Football League, and unfortunately, the pro football writers that vote for this, there's a 50-member committee, and a lot of them have biases and the axes to grind, and this is what happens. So, but I do agree with you that eventually Belichick and Kraft will get in, but they're going to have to wait their turn, and you know they are part of the NFL story, so they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, make them wait. And other than people in New England, I don't think anybody's crying for them. So, speaking of the Hall of Fame, wanted to get your take on the class of 2026. It was Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, Adam Vinatieri, and Roger Craig from the Niners got in. That was a senior pick.
The one pick that got in there, and I think they all deserve. Kuechly had to do a little bit more looking at his time played, his service. 7-time Pro Bowler. I mean, was he a beast? Yeah, but it's like,
He played
I mean,
7 seasons, so it's
yeah,
like
it's
retired young.
linebacker though. Linebacker's thick though. To be a linebacker in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's like I had to look into that one a little bit. Roger Craig should have been in way before he got in just now. That's the one I was like, it's about time. Roger Craig was Marshall Faulk before Marshall Faulk. He was all these guys, thousand yards rushing this season, 1,000 yards receiving, the high knees against Miami in the Super Bowl. he was the guy. And the fact that the young guys now are the young kids growing up now, what are we in
We're
Generation Z?
Gen X.
No, the
Yeah.
guys after us, though. I
Oh, the
mean,
millennials or whatever.
Gen
Yeah,
Zs and all these
the
guys. And
Nates of the world. Because Kevin, we talk about, he and I watch the games all the time together. And goes, how good was that guy? It was is he better than he's like McCaffrey catches the ball better. I'm like, hold on. I said, you didn't even watch these guys play. I said, Roger Craig was the truth. He was the first guy, thousand. His hands were incredible. I mean, he always wore the weightlifting gloves too. I don't ever remember them,
Mhm.
and he could pick up a blitz. He ran between the tackles. Came out of Nebraska as really a wingback, and then Bill Walsh, one of the greatest coaches ever, designed an offense around him in terms of his catching ability and running the ball. So he was that complete dual threat guy. So for all the young guys out there, he'd be a top 5 fantasy football
Oh my
running
God,
back
yeah. Oh yeah.
easily every year.
Well, the funny thing is, too, I'm watching, like, I have my own mental, recollection of Roger Craig, and he gets in the Hall of Fame. You get to watch a little more of the game tape that you haven't watched in a while.
Yeah,
In my mind, he was bigger. Like, I guess I'm just used to today's
right.
NFL players. It's like what he was doing at that size. I mean, he didn't have the jacked build like these guys have today, But I mean, he was physical. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, that guy. It was long overdue that he got in the Hall of Fame. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and he was a running back. He was a precursor to Marshall Faulk, as you said, Ladainian Tomlinson, and even Bijan Robinson. All these guys, they designed that West Coast offense around him in terms of catching those swing passes and the arrow routes and all that stuff. So he was an incredible player. So I was glad to see him get in. As a senior guy, he had to wait his turn. I mean, you saw a lot of guys go in ahead of him. Vinatieri, another kicker gets in there, so that's what Jan Stenerud, Morton Anderson, and now Adam Vinatieri. I guess I'm okay. Kickers are necessary evil, like we were saying earlier. With Myers making the 5 field goals in the Super Bowl, but he was a money kicker for the Patriots, and,
Oh
and
God,
then
yeah.
he
The
also
Colts.
did. He played well for the Colts too.
Yeah.
So he, big time player. He gets in. Uh, After him, don't let any other kickers in for a while. Now, obviously the guy we talked about, and he got himself in some hot water, Justin Tucker.
Oh,
He's
not a
probably the
chance.
he's
Not a
probably yeah
chance.
he's probably the next guy they're going to debate,
No.
and yeah he's going to have to wait with
Yeah.
that resume. So
Yeah.
and he got a tryout this year, Kevin, by the Saints. The Saints
Mhm.
they were luckily they didn't sign him because that would have been a firestorm. But yeah, Justin Tucker might be the next kicker that we discussed. We talked about Luke Kuechly, physical player. He was not very big. I remember interviewing him in the locker
Yeah.
room, but he was a great tackler. I mean, and unfortunately for his size, he had the concussion issues. Big time contributor to that Cam Newton Super Bowl team. But yeah, he just wore out at a young age, and he gets in young, and like you're saying, I guess they're starting to look at the linebackers a little different because you had Patrick Willis. He didn't play a lot, and he retired. He got in the Hall of Fame earlier, so they're letting these guys in earlier. Larry Fitzgerald, he was one of my favorites, Kevin. I mean, uh, came from Valley Forge Military Academy, former Vikings ball boy at the University of Pittsburgh. I mean, he was just incredible. His hands were just, uh, you know, better. His hands were up there. I'd put him up there with Chris Carter, Jerry Rice in terms of his hands. That 2008 season where he carried the Cardinals to the Super Bowl. They beat the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, and they almost beat the Steelers, if not for Santonio Holmes' toe tap. Fitzgerald was the man that season.
First of all, I want to say James Harrison without that touchdown for about 100 yards, Arizona wins that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roethlisberger to Holmes, that was incredible. And like, that was a great game. But I actually have had conversations with people, and it's a very 50-50 type debate when I say, who would you rather have, Larry Fitzgerald or Calvin Johnson, Megatron? And I go with Larry Fitzgerald. That's how much,
I
I
do
think of
too.
Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I think he's a game wrecker. I mean, he could run any route. His hands were extremely good, and he also could get deep. Thing is, Calvin Johnson, he was dominant too, but I just feel like so many of his stats that he put up, with like John Kitna, they were getting him. late in the game that was out of hand. They were down like 3 touchdowns, and then they were getting some garbage time stats. But and his hands were a little bit more inconsistent than Larry Fitzgerald. I think Larry Fitzgerald, a consummate pro. It was great to see him get in. And then lastly, Drew Brees. I mean, he was the short quarterback. I remember him coming out of Purdue, and they were like, "Oh, he's like Doug Flutie. He's too small. He's not going to get it done." And he's at the Chargers, and it was crazy at the time. The Chargers, I believe, they had Ryan Leaf, they had Philip Rivers, Doug Flutie, and Breeze were all there on the same roster, and I think Schottenheimer was a coach. I don't think he really believed in Drew Brees, and Brees hurt his shoulder, and Miami almost signed him, and then he ended up
Mhm.
going to the Saints. And after Katrina, he brought that franchise back, brought him to a Super Bowl victory. So, talk a little bit about Drew Brees.
Drew Brees, he was a lock. I mean, you look at his numbers. I mean, crying out loud, most of the stuff he's in the top five of all time, touchdowns, yards, all that stuff. He won a Super Bowl for, he didn't win a Super Bowl for like, popular like the Cowboys, the 49ers or something like that. He won it for the New Orleans Saints,
The
the Aints.
Aints,
Yes. So the
the
fact
team with the bags when we were kids.
exactly. So the fact he won a Super Bowl for the New Orleans Saints with the numbers he has, and especially his stature, you have to take into consideration. Yeah, I mean, he deserved to be in. I think that was a slam dunk, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and he was a great quarterback. Now, in terms of being a commentator, that wasn't his best thing. He stepped away from him. It's interesting because you see Romo, you see Aikman, you see Tom Brady getting these big contracts, and they tried to do it with him, and he just was not good in the booth, and they stepped away from him. But um, he's a credit to the game. I mean, what he did for New Orleans and him and Sean Payton, they always just be remembered for that, along with Steve Gleason and the rest of that group. And just incredible. And yeah, very deserving of Hall of Fame. So I think it's a good class. I found it interesting that they only went with 5 this year. So they're talking about maybe changing the rules because there were a couple of years where they let in a ton of guys, like 7, 8 guys. And this year was only 5. And you left some guys on the sideline. So you'd like to see some of those guys get some consideration. Is there are there some players that you'd like to see get some consideration for the Hall of Fame?
I still don't understand how Torrey Holt is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Torrey Holt,
yeah,
he
Isaac
has
Bruce is
great
in. Why
numbers.
not Holt?
Yeah, I mean, Kurt Warner, Marshall Falk, Isaac Bruce. Torrey Holt was huge, man. And that guy still isn't in. I think he'll get in at one point? Yes, but I mean, yeah, that's on my end who I think should be in.
Yeah, I think Reggie Wayne's also not in
Yeah.
the Hall of Fame too, and uh, I, uh, Don Coryell, Eric Coryell. I mean, he all those passing records. You talk about coaches not in the Hall of Fame. I think he needs to get a look. And another guy they're talking about, he's a former MVP, and a lot of people are starting to forget about him. Kenny Anderson. I mean, do you think he should get a look in terms of the Hall of Fame?
When I was a kid, Kenny Anderson was almost an old man at that point. Like he just got to the Super Bowl loss against the Niners. You kind of seen him on the back end. And even every now and then, every couple of years, and it just happened actually for me a couple of weeks ago, you stumble upon some Kenny Anderson, rabbit hole material, and you go down it, and it's like that guy should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
The fact that he's almost forgotten at this point.
yeah, you talk about that Bengals team, those Bengals teams, that made the Super Bowls. They lost the Niners both times. He was the quarterback, and the first one the Niners won with Joe Montana. It was a pretty close game, and Anderson and them, they almost got it done. And you think about him throwing the ball to Dan Ross, throwing it to Chris Collinsworth, and he was a big time quarterback. So yeah, and a former MVP. I think he needs to get some consideration. We're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 Game Coast Sports Digital Network. Kevin and I coming down the stretch here. Speaking of quarterbacks, the league year is coming. There's 3 quarterback situations. Want to get your take on. Kirk Cousins is due to, I think, get about $30 million. I think the Falcons are going to cut him, given that they now have a new GM in there, and Matt Ryan's in charge of the front office. What are you thinking in terms of Kirk Cousins and any possible landed spots?
I mean, I don't have the facts in front of me, but like dead cap space that Kirk Cousins' contract's going to create and everything else. I mean, Atlanta, it was horrible when they started. It was terrible ownership communication with the GM. You signed Kirk Cousins to that deal. You drafted Michael Penix Jr., who has a history of getting injured, and he's been injured since he's been in the league. But if they cut him, will somebody pick him up? Oh yeah, it's the NFL, man. Some teams go through 3, 4 quarterbacks. He'll find work.
Yeah, I think definitely he's going to find somebody to sign him, but yeah, they're going to step away from him. They're not going to pay him that money, and we'll see how that goes with the new brain trust there with the Atlanta Falcons. Tua Tagovailoa. Now this is it. Jeff Hafley's coming in there. GM John Eric Sullivan coming over, both from Green Bay, and you got Tua sitting there. He makes about $51 million a year. Is there any? They don't want him, but is there any chance anybody takes him?
Not a chance. $50 million for that guy. Come on, man. It's he was once again a shorter statured quarterback, history of taking big hits. You lock him up for that kind of money, and it's just no. I think Miami wears that one till the end. They're going to have to cut him and deal with the ramifications. No, I do not see a sane general manager trying to make a trade for Tua at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's maybe like Russell Wilson with Denver Broncos. They overpaid for him and they are stuck with him. And the thing is that as a GM, you got to be careful who you give these extensions to because now they shut him down for the year. McDaniel and the old coaching staff, and they didn't want him. But yeah, he's a problem, and they got Michael Penix sitting there. Penix coming off his own ACL injury, I believe, something or leg injury. Uh, so Atlanta's got thing going with Kirk Cousins, and now you got Tua with Miami. What are they going to do? So Halfley's coming in there, but I think he doesn't want anything to do with Tua. So yeah, they may just have to cut him. And then the last quarterback, this is Nate's boy. Kyler Murray is due $36 million in 2026. He only played in 5 games. They have a new head coach, Mike LaFleur. The existing GM is Monty Osenfort. I mean, is there any chance Kyler's back with the Cardinals? And if not, does a team like the Steelers take a flyer on
I like to start by saying Kyler Murray's a bum.
him?
No, he's a bum, dude. And like we all know he is. The fact is, would the Steelers take a chance on him? Absolutely. And you got Mason Rudolph. I don't even know if he's under contract at this point. Rodgers and McCarthy. Yeah, Rodgers. If he wasn't coming back to begin with McCarthy there, he's definitely not coming back. I mean, yeah, the Steelers could get. I think you could. I'll tell you this. I think Kyler Murray is more movable than Tua is at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Kyler Murray. He only played 5 games, and he's another smallish quarterback. And I just think with a lot of these smaller quarterbacks, after a while, they just don't believe in them. And, they take too many hits, and they're like, oh, can't count on this guy to be out there week in, week out. And we'll see. But he's due a lot of money, but you got to find a trading partner. I always let everybody, they want to play fantasy football GM, and they're like, oh, just send them to wherever, send them to Jacksonville or something, But yeah, you got to work out the money for their contract, and when you make a trade, there's cap situations going. So I know these GMs don't want them, but they got to find a dance partner. But that's something that we're definitely going to have to look at as we move closer to free agency and the draft. Speaking of the draft, I don't know if you watched this, the Senior Bowl. That was just recently, another one of these conventions for everybody around the NFL, but the American team won 17 to 9 over the National League. But um, Garrett Nussmeier was an MVP from LSU. Are you familiar with him?
I am actually. I have watched him play. I just think it's tough with college, and I'll even throw basketball in that as well. Football is the same. Sometimes the system makes the guy. Sometimes the system holds back the guy and his ability, what he can do, until he gets into a pro offense. Uh, I mean, it's nice to see. You want to see the guys go out there, doing some things. But I mean, I mean, it's a roll of the dice. It really is. But Dustmeyer, yeah, he's a decent guy. I don't know if I, bank on him, but he's all right.
Yeah, yeah, and then also one of the other quarterbacks there was Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavea. He was 10 and 13 for 78 yards, so he looked pretty good in the game. But he's another one of these smallish quarterbacks. I mean, I think he may be about 5'9" ish. Do you think he has a chance in the NFL?
He's a fun sized little Kit Kat, isn't he? He's a tiny guy. You put on your keychain. Nah, the thing is, everyone's remembering about that guy is how he acted at the Heisman Trophy ceremony afterwards. He was a jackass. He sat there and he showed out in the worst way you can as a human being and everything else about Mendoza. So, with the stature against him, with the way he's acted in public, yeah, I would say tread lightly on drafting him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for him. And the quarterbacks move the needle, and everybody's talking about this Fernando Mendoza. He's pretty much signed, sealed, delivered for the 3-14 Raiders. The Raiders are now Clint Kubiak accepted the position today. He's Seattle's offense coordinator, so he's now the Raiders' new head coach. Are Is this going to work? Or is Mendoza going to be like a guy I comp him to, Joey Harrington? Is he what kind of pro are we thinking about Mendoza? Is he too nice for the NFL?
I think that it's one of the better landing spots you could get because if you get to a top 10 drafting team, they're bad. There's a reason why they're in the top 10 unless somebody traded for the position. And the Raiders, we've talked about before, you have Genti at running back. You have Bowers coming back hopefully healthy all season at tight end. I mean, you have something you can work with. You need to get that kid some offensive line help so he's not getting crushed out there. And that might be involved with the Max Crosby trade at some point because that's been rumored around as well. But nah, I think it's a decent landing spot for him, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, if you're the Raiders, you have to take him.
Yeah, and you have Kubiak there, and also Tom Brady is involved in the ownership group. I'm sure he'll talk to the young man, and what better tutor to have than Tom Brady? And uh, in terms of important dates coming up, you have the franchise tag coming in a couple. That is March 3rd. The combine underwear Olympics, which is March 23rd to March 2nd. That is in Indianapolis. Will you pay attention to that?
Absolutely not. I can watch guys jump up and down and bench press over at Planet Fitness. I'll be all right.
Yeah, and the thing with combine, it's all fake. You know what I mean? It's not real football. And you see too often where the guys have these great measurables. What do they do when in a real game, in real situation? So,
Lloyd,
your
Lloyd,
favorite.
I gotta throw this one out to you. When I mentioned Combine, who is Captain Combine for you?
It's always Mike Mamula for
Thank
anybody for
you.
the number 15. Somebody the one day was like, "Oh, that 59, Mike Mamula." I'm like, "Hold on, 59 for the Eagles is Seth Joyner." But
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but Mike Mamula, Ray Rhodes. Oh, he told me he's going to ball his fist up and punch Eric Williams in the mouth. Yeah, how'd that work out for him?
My favorite thing was that year because I was still young enough where we were like getting football cards and stuff like that. Mike Mamula must have been in about 5 football cards right behind the quarterback as he threw the ball. He was great at getting a hurry, but he couldn't get a
Uh,
sack.
Led the league in hurries. How many times did you hear that one?
Uh-huh.
He was almost there, but that guy could not play. And
Yeah.
it's just funny how these combine warriors and they send these kids off to training camps in California, Florida, and Arizona to get them ready specifically for these drills. And then some of them put up these huge numbers, and they're just not the same. I remember the Steelers drafted a guy, Mike Kudla, out of Ohio State. He broke the bench press record. He benched like 50 times, 225, but the guy couldn't play. He was a defensive lineman that couldn't get to the quarterback. So you got to be careful with these measurables. And a lot of the best prospects, they know they don't even have to work out in terms of the combine. A lot of times their agent says, nah, we're good. So that is uh, again, February 23rd to the 2nd. The league year does start on March 11th. That's important time because that you're going to see some guys get cut. The cut bait with some guys like we were talking about Kirk Cousins earlier. The draft, the franchise tag, which is going to be fun with George Pickens, March the 3rd. So you're going to see George Pickens probably be very angry that day. Even though he's getting a 1-year, $28 million contract, no signing bonus. But yeah, that's the day a lot of players and the team start fighting. So that's March 3rd. The draft is April 23rd to the 25th, and that's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And already we can start talking about Super Bowl 61. It's February 14th in SoFi Stadium in Inglewood. So, the NFL, they have their studios and everything right there. And it's funny because the Super Bowl is a party. I mean, did you see all those celebrities there?
Oh, I saw them, and I guarantee you they couldn't tell you more than two guys on each team, and two, that's me being generous.
Yeah, it's funny because they're all there, and I guess media day's not what it used to be. Some of them were there, but all of them seem to be there hawking, whatever product they're trying to or sponsorship they're affiliated to. So it was, it was a good week for everybody I talked to that was there in Santa Clara, and we'll see. But the NFL rolls on, and congratulations to the Seahawks and another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Anything, Kevin, before we jump out?
Lastly, I want to say I thought Bad Bunny's halftime show was fire. I liked it, man. I liked the music. It was a good vibe. I don't know what people were talking about. The show itself, though, it could have been a better vantage point. The coldest thing I saw, though, and I'm pretty sure we'll follow this up later. Cardi B and Stephon Diggs broke up during the the Super Bowl.
Oh, did they
game.
really?
They did. She had a $1.2 million after party plan that was canceled.
Oh,
And
man.
they unfollowed each other on Instagram because he had his baby mama and his other kid in the front row. Story's still developing, but Stephon Diggs and Cardi B broke up during the Super Bowl. I just thought that's cold, man.
See, that's the kind of stuff you get here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Kevin bringing inside knowledge and entertainment tonight. Yeah, I like Bad Bunny. I thought that was fun. All the scenery that he did, and I liked it. Hey, I mean, and
Good stuff.
the commercial I liked the most was the Goodwill Dunkin'. Had Affleck and all the '90s people out there. I guess I'm showing my age, but that was fun. And you know, overall, I thought Super Bowl was okay. Wasn't as boring as some people were painting it out to be, and it was not a disaster. And I'm sure when we get the numbers, we're going to see how many millions watched it. There'll probably be like 200 million people that watched it. So
Oh, yeah.
another great week for the NFL. They're putting money in their coffers. That's the big one. So the cap will be over 300 million this off season for the first time. So we'll see how the NFL goes, and there'll be more to talk about here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football. We'll talk to you later.
All right, Duncan, where you at?
All right, well, we're just going to end the stream. Go ahead, Kevin. You can X out, and I'll talk to
Yeah,
you later. All right, Duncan.
he's got enough splice area there where he can cut us.
There we go. All right.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.